Hi there, my name is Stephanie. This is my boy Roscoe. I'm a nationally certified Pilates teacher, and today we're going to look at Pilates fundamentals and how to get started on the mat. So if you've done Pilates before, great. This is a good refresher. If you never have, this is a good way to learn how to get started, whether you want to go eventually to a studio or to a mat Pilates class somewhere. This is a good way to just learn the basics on your own, and all you need is a floor and a mat and a dog if you want one. Okay, so let's start with the fundamentals. So first is the breath. Okay, so breath is super important. The Pilates way of breathing is super efficient. Joseph Pilates said that breath is the first act of life and the last, and it should be tied to the movement. So we are going to learn that first. So we inhale through our nose and we exhale through our mouth audibly. So the first thing you want to think about is your rib cage. When you inhale, it's going to move east to west like an accordion. So you don't want your shoulders to go up and down when you inhale, but rather let your ribs fill up east to west. When we exhale audibly through our mouth, you're going to pull your navel in, make an audible exhale. So when I teach my clients, I use the sound shh, SH. You can also use like you're fogging a mirror, HA, or you can just breathe however it feels comfortable to you, but I encourage you to breathe. Please breathe. Please don't hold your breath. So sit up tall, whether you're sitting cross-legged or in a diamond shape or with your legs out straight, or if you need to sit on top of something to sit up tall, like a small chair or a cushion or a pillow or something like that. But I do encourage you to lengthen your spine and sit up as tall as you can. So if I do a full breath, you're going to see my rib cage hopefully move east to west when I inhale. And then I'm going to exhale audibly and pull in my belly. Nice long exhale. So certainly this efficient way of breathing does increase your lung capacity. So let's do it again together. You're going to take a deep inhale through your nose, east to west. And long exhale, audible. Pull the navel in. Okay, great. So the next thing we're going to learn is some fundamentals. So form and breath, form and breath. Those are the two things you'll hear me say a lot when trying to do Pilates correctly. It's very easy to do Pilates incorrectly, and it's not so easy to do it correctly. So my goal is to have all of my clients and all of you to do it correctly and get the benefits from it. So we're going to just lie on our backs today. That is supine. We're going to learn how to find neutral. We're going to learn how to do a cervical nod and how to properly lift the head. I know a lot of you may have neck issues, and that's okay. You can be safe. You can leave your head down if you need to. But I will say that I've noticed with my clients over the past 19 years that the more you do it properly, the more that your abs get strong, and therefore your neck will hurt less. So let me lie down. I'm going to shift the camera just a little bit so you can see me on my mat. Excuse me. Oh, Roscoe. Roscoe likes to do Pilates, by the way. Okay, so I'm going to lie on my back. Now, these bony bones that stick out right here at the front of your pelvis, these are called your ASIS, and this is how you're going to find neutral with your feet. So your feet should be the same distance apart as these bones, or hips width apart. So not the outside of my hips, but these bones. That is hips width apart. Now, when my arms are by my side, I'm going to look straight up, and that's neutral. Now, right under my back right here, under the small of my back, put your fingers under the small of your back. That is your mouse house. Okay, that's what my teacher at PHI Pilates, the wonderful Dr. Christine Romani Ruby, that is what she calls it, and that is what I have been calling it all of these years. So we call this the mouse house, this little space under the small of your back, and that is just your natural curve to your spine, and we're going to keep that when our head is down. Okay, so there's two ways to lose your mouse house, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So if I tilt my pelvis, If I press my low back into the mat, you'll see what happens when you try that. So do that. Press your low back into the mat, and it makes your tush lift, right, into a little tilt. That's a posterior pelvic tilt. You don't have to remember that per se, but just know that if you press your low back into the mat and tilt, then you're losing your mouse house. Now, we really don't do that kind of tilt too much in Pilates. We do use it in a bridge, which we're going to do in a little bit. So if I press my low back into the mat and then I continue lifting my tush up, that is a bridge. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. Now, there's another way to lose your mouse house, and that is by coming up into at least a 30-degree angle to do abdominal work. Okay, so let's talk about how to do that safely. We'll start with the head. So if I'm just looking up at the sky and I want to safely lift my head, I'm going to do what's called a cervical nod, which means I'm going to tilt my chin down to my chest, but I'm going to keep my head on the mat. So this is a nod, right? That's it, just that tiny little movement. So I tilt my chin to my chest. That's called a cervical nod. Now from there, I slowly curl up my head, neck, and shoulders to look at my belly. Now here's the kicker about this one. What I see a lot of times when people come up to look at their belly, watch my pelvis, is they tilt. You see how my booty just lifted, right? You don't want to do that when you're doing abdominal work, because then you're really getting into the hip flexor and the glute, and you're not using the abdominals as much. So what I want you to think about when we do lift our head for abdominal work is that you have this imaginary cup of tea on your belly. Think about a fine piece of china, and it sits there below your belly button, and you don't want it to spill. Okay, so at its very most basic, I'm going to do a cervical nod. I'm going to slowly curl up and look at my cup of tea. So see, if I tilt my pelvis, boop, up like that, the tea spills. So this is wrong. This is right. This is wrong. This is right. I've got my cup of tea. Okay, so that is how we're going to get the abdominals working in the correct way. So let's go back to talk about the bridge for a second. So that was the first way that we lost our mouse house. So again, this is our mouse house. The first way to lose the mouse house is to press that low back into the mat, lift the bottom up, and here I am in a bridge. Now from here, I want to stay here for a second. I want to feel all 10 toes on the mat, press into my arms, shoulders, and back of my head. Now coming down, I want to articulate. So I want to think about my upper back, then my middle back, then my lower back, and then my booty and hips. And here I am back at my mouse house. Now we need to tie this to a breath. So I'm going to show you once. I'm going to inhale, prepare. Tilt the pelvis, exhale, bridge. Hold, inhale. Long exhale, trickle down the spine. Back to my mouse house. So I'm going to inhale, prepare. I'm going to tilt the pelvis. I'm going to exhale, lift the bridge up. We're going to hold the bridge up there on the inhale. Make sure you have pressure on all 10 toes, arms, shoulders, and head. And then trickle down, articulate down the spine on the exhale, upper back, middle back, lower back, hips, and tush, going back to your mouse house. So let's do that together a couple of times here. I'm going to prepare, inhale. Tilt your tush, exhale, bridge. Hold, inhale. Exhale, articulate down. Back to your neutral, back to your mouse house. Prepare, inhale. Tilt the pelvis, exhale, bridge. Hold, inhale. Long exhale, coming down. Go back to your mouse house. Okay, great. Now, let's move on to another fundamental, which we learned just a minute ago about the keeping your pelvic neutral, or meaning keeping your cup of tea when we do the cervical nod and come up and look at our belly. So that technically is called a half roll up, and it is at its most basic the the core of a lot of abdominal work that we do in Pilates. Okay, so let's review again before we put it all together with the breath. So here I am in neutral. I've got my mouse house. Now remember, when I come up and look at my cup of tea into the half roll up, I do lose the mouse house because I'm lifting the torso, but I'm not moving the pelvis. If you tilt the booty up like that, you spill your cup of tea and you don't get into the deep abdominals as much. So just to review again, I'm going to do a nod with my head on the mat. I'm going to curl up without engaging my booty. I'm trying not to clench. I'm trying not to tilt. I'm keeping my cup of tea. And then I'm going to lie back down. Now I'm going to put the arms with it. I'm going to keep my shoulders into the socket. So this is protraction out of my socket. I'm going to retract into the socket. My arms are straight. Roscoe must have had enough. I'm going to do a nod. And then as I curl up, keeping my teacup, my arms come down. They don't touch the mat, but they come low. And then when I lie back down on my back, they come back up over my chest. So here's the breath. I'm going to inhale, prepare, nod, exhale, half roll up. Looking at the cup of tea. Hold, inhale, exhale, lie back down. Nice and simple, but very correct. Then when we go on to harder things, we've got this base. We've got the fundamentals and we're doing it correctly and we can move on. All right, let's do that again together. Prepare, inhale, nod, exhale, half roll up. Hold, inhale, exhale, lie down. Good. All right, now that is a half roll up. Now, if I take just a little step further, I'm going to take the legs into what's called a tabletop. So think about a 90-degree angle. So your knee is in line with your hip, your heel is in line with your knee, and I put my legs together in a 90-degree angle. Now, ideally, I can see my tippy toes without lifting my head off the floor. Okay, and notice how my knee is right over my hip. So I'm not bringing my knees in, because you see what happens when you bring the knees into the chest? The booty is rounded and lifted. Okay, so we want to keep the knee right over the hip and the toes slightly visible without lifting our head. Same exercise. I'm still going to keep a cup of tea on my belly, but now you want to also keep a cup of tea on your shins. Okay, so prepare, inhale, nod, exhale, half roll up. Get a little shake in your abs. That's a good thing. Embrace the shake. Hold, inhale. Exhale, lie down. See if you can keep your legs there for another one. Prepare, inhale. Nod. Keep your cup of tea. Hold, inhale. Exhale, lie down. Bring your knees to your chest. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to move the screen a little bit so I can sit up and talk to you. But thank you so much for joining me today on this fundamentals video. You learned the breath. You learned how to find neutral and supine. You learned about cervical nod. You learned about how to tilt your pelvis and lose your mouse house into a bridge. You also learned about losing your mouse house by coming up into a half roll up to at least a 30-degree angle to look at your cup of tea. We learned the exercise bridge and the exercise the half roll up with our feet flat and also with our legs in tabletop. So the next video will be a beginner mat class video. Thank you so much for joining me, and spread the word and do Pilates. Thanks.